So this is one that I was really excited to watch, and I'll tell you why in a second. This is Arrow Video's new Blu-ray of 1969's Spanish horror film, The House That Screamed. This is it was released in America by American International Pictures, which always warms my cold heart whenever I see that title come up in front of anything. And this is a movie that originally I had seen a TV spot for this, where I grew up late 70s through the 80s, let's say, and Channel 38 in Boston, WSBK, was huge for me. Channel 58.6 in Boston, Channel 38 in Boston, and WPIX Channel 11 in New York, because they showed all these really cool old, to me at the time, when I do the math now, a lot of these movies were barely a decade old, but they showed old horror movies on TV in the afternoon and late at night, and that's where I really kind of got a taste for all this stuff. And at some point, I will get to this movie, believe me, at some point, Channel 38 did this thing called Drive-In Saturday Night, and at that point, I hadn't been to a drive-in in years, and it was a lot of old TV spots and trailers and drive-in snack bar ads, and the host segments for the movies were done at a local drive-in at the time, and they were just trashy drive-in movies. But it gave me a taste for that, which kind of helped lead me on the path to what I do when I'm not doing this right now. And one of those TV spots was for The House That Screamed, and it looked really weird and creepy. Flash forward to years later, and it was never a movie that was easy to see on video here as far as I was concerned, or on cable or anything like that, so I always stuck in my head. And this it still goes on, this great retro drive-in Dusk Till Dawn show that happens at the Riverside Drive-In in Vandergrift, Pennsylvania, a couple times a year, called Drive-In Super Monsterama. One of those, this film was playing on the bill, and I was like, oh man, The House That Screamed, I can finally see it. And it was last on the bill. It was fourth movie, and this was just not, in the scheme of things, maybe it was 10 years ago, maybe, or within the last 10 years. And as it would always happen, the movie I wanted to see most was the last movie of the night. And when it finally got to the movie, I fell asleep. So I missed it. And then it played again at the Mahoning Drive-In, where I work now, on film. And it was, I believe, unless I'm combining the two, it was the second or last film or third film of a night, and it got fogged out. So like I keep not being able to see The House That Screamed until now. So I was ready for this one. So there's two versions of the film on this Blu-ray. You can watch the extended version, which runs 105 minutes, and it has an alternate title, The Finishing School, which I think was its original Spanish title. Or no, The Residency. Spanish equivalence of The Residency, or The Residence is what it was called. And the theatrical version is 94 minutes. So it's about like an 11-minute difference between the two. I chose to watch the longer version because that tends to be what I do. Transfer on this is beautiful. This looks so good. It's crazy how good this movie from 1969. This, probably not terribly expensive to make at the time, but gorgeous film. What is this film about, you may ask, after he's been rambling for 3 minutes? This film is set in a boarding school in France, somewhere in the 1800s. Young girl, our entry to this is a young girl is dropped off there by her father. It is run with an iron fist by the headmistress, who's played by Lilli Palmer, and she's just super strict. She has a young sort of genteel son that she keeps locked away for some reason, maybe because he's only male in an all-female boarding school, and she doesn't want him to, have too much of a good time, I don't know. And strange goings on. Murders start happening. Weird, creepy things start happening. And who done it? Who will survive, and what will be left of them? So incredibly atmospheric film. I watched this late at night, and it was super effective, super creepy, some great shocker scenes, great shocker ending. And it's a movie that I'm surprised more people don't know, but I think it's just not been terribly well available for a long time until now. So loved the film itself. There's two edits. The US version, or let's say the regular cut, it does open with that AIP logo, the AIP logo in the clouds, and it ends with something amazing that I was shocked that it was there, and I'm so glad it is. It ends with this incredibly brief teaser for the first Vincent Price Dr. Phibes film, back when it was just called Dr. Phibes. It doesn't even have Vincent Price in the clip. It's just this super short clip that was tacked on to the end of this film as literally a trailed the film. And I just love that it was on there, because that's what people would have seen when they saw A House That Screamed back in 69 in the theater, or 70, whenever that re-release was from, or release was from. So, extras. So this was directed, I didn't mention this. This was directed by Narciso Ibáñez Serrador, who's apparently a pretty big name in Spain. He did like an anthology TV series, which I believe Severin has released recently, and so popular that it was revived by some pretty big names in Spanish horror now, because it was like the show they grew up with. It was like their Twilight Zone or their Alfred Hitchcock Presents. And he did, I don't think he did a lot in the way of feature films. Mostly he worked in TV. So the film is great. I really like this movie. And so let's see, what do we have here for extras? We have, you can watch it in Spanish or in English. And the internet, it's, so, okay, my notes here. You can watch it in Spanish or in English. A lot of us, you know, we kind of want to watch it either in the language we know, or we want to watch it in the original language because we want the lips to match. A lot of films, I think this one included in those days, were shot MOS, without sound, without sound, silent, and they would dub them later. The Dario Argento's movies are like that. All Jackie Chan's movies up to Police Story 3 were done that way. It was very common. All Leone films were done that way. And there's no right or wrong way to do this. It depends on whose lips you want to see matching in this, basically. So if you watch the English language version, half the cast was speaking English on the set and their lips more or less match. If you watch the Spanish version of this in Spanish language, half the cast was speaking Spanish and their lips match. So, you know, take your pick. I don't know. I watched it in English because that's the way, that's what I speak, but also that's the way I would have seen it if I watched this at a drive-in and I stayed awake, basically. So there's an audio commentary by Ana Bogotskaya. She is from Spain. She knows well of the director, and she gives tons of background on the director and the cast and the film and everything associated with that. Only downside to this commentary for me was that there were some pretty long stretches where she wasn't commenting. She wasn't talking. And for me, then that becomes, I'm just kind of watching the movie again. So that was unfortunate, but when I watch commentaries, I tend to I don't watch the movie again. I listen. I do something to busy myself while I'm watching the commentary so that I'm not basically using up a viewing, if that makes any sense. Unless somebody is pointing something out or says, look at that, or listen, I'm doing something else. So it wasn't as big a deal. I just realized in whatever I was doing, I'm like, wow, she hasn't said anything in a while. I'm just listening to people talk in Spanish now. But overall, it was a good commentary. Interviews. We have interviews with the actor John Moulder-Brown, who played the son in the film, and that's 24 minutes. You get an act, Mary Maud, who is also plays one of the students in the film. That's 11 minutes. You get the author of the story the film was based on, Juan Tebar. It's a 9-minute interview. You get an interview with the son of the director who talks about working with his father and talking about his father and how he's helped to carry his father's legacy along. That is 14 minutes. You get Spanish horror and fantasy film scholar Dr. Antonio Lizcaro Ribol I mangle these names because I'm reading this on a laptop that's way over there. So no offense to anybody involved. He does a discussion about the film and the director. That's 20 minutes. And then you get selections from the Spanish version, which is 6 minutes, and it's alternate angles, alternate credits from the original release, which was called, this is what I said earlier, La Residencia. And that's taken from a standard def source. So it doesn't look as good as this transfer, but it's really there just for illustration purposes. And that's fascinating to me, how things were changed for various reasons, for censorship reasons, for speeding things up reasons. Sometimes different territories, they just want to cut a film differently to appeal to their audiences. So I love that kind of thing, why they put that on there. You get a trailer gallery, which consists of the U.S. theatrical trailer, 2 TV spots, one of which is the one I saw on that Channel 38 thing, and 2 US radio spots, 2 US radio spots, and then an image gallery, which is 35 images from on-set photography to still sets that were released to promote the film, to posters, to lobby cards, and on and on and on. So I really like this release. This is one I think is probably under the radar for a lot of people because it isn't a film who, as I like to say, it hasn't reverberated in the popular consciousness since it came out. It was kind of obscure then. It stayed obscure. But this is the kind of thing that Arrow comes up with again and again, are these little films that we horror fans maybe weren't quite aware of before, and they're like these little treasures. It's like Mill of the Stone Women. It reminds me of that. It's another movie that had been kind of around, but never really has held on like a lot of other things from the time period and the same genre and area of the world. But yeah, I really like this one a lot. It might not be everybody's bag, but I was like giddy after I watched this movie and the extras. So available now on Blu-ray from Arrow Home Video is 1969's The House That Screamed.